Hello, my name is Dr. Maya Byfield. My business is The Phenomenal STEMist. I'm so excited to be here in Orange County because it's where I live. I live in Apopka, Florida. And I decided to make this business because I saw a need for underrepresented students to be successful in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, math. And the best way I can do that is just provide products for parents to prepare them, whether it's a book or online STEM camps or just video podcasting. My goal is to transform this community, especially those who are underrepresented. And the way to do that is to help parents understand their children's minds and basically develop them at different stages of their lives to be prepared for a successful STEM career. Thank you so much. That's why I'm here. We're back, and it's just us. We're back, and it's just the crew, just us four. What's up? What's up, everybody? It's the Phenomenal STEMist and Associates. What's going on, Jamal, Kamoy, Howard? How y'all doing?
I'm saying? Good.
Blessed and highly favored.
Yes, yes.
I'm back from alumni weekend. I know, these past couple of months, we've been sharing the spotlight with my fellow Oakwoodites, and I just want to appreciate you guys for being a part of that. We had like almost 100 uh, class of 2000 alums come out, hang. We supported our school. It was such a success, and I want to thank the 10 Year Me podcast for making yourselves available to help promote. We raised about uh, $5,000, probably over $5,000 for towards our endowment, and we hope to continue that for the next 5 years so that we can support our institutions. But I just want to thank you guys. Y'all are so cool. Y'all are so supportive, and y'all are so smart. We have a really interesting topic. Yeah, a really interesting topic this week. And I was talking to them on the background about how I didn't come up with these topics. I planned these topics out using artificial intelligence over a whole year. I just and the random topic that was picked for May 2025. I've created the path since May 2024. So I created a year and a half's worth of topics using AI, and May 4, 2025, they said we should discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. I wonder why. Howard, what's up with your video? Everything's okay? Okay, while we're waiting on HW to get settled, I wanna talk about the book, Phenomenal STEMist. Hold on, this should be the main one. I don't know how it switched, but there you go. Get your child ready. Get your child ready. Phenomenal STEMist: how to prepare a successful STEM student from the womb to the university. Listen, I have it in both English and Spanish. Okay. Click that QR code if you would like more information on how to get these very important books. All right. I don't know what's up with Howie, but he'll be back. He'll be back. I have a question for you guys. I have a question for you guys. Now, what are some unique challenges? What are some unique challenges in that STEM fields face, that people in STEM fields face when it comes to building a truly diverse equitable, and inclusive workplace? Like, do we even have to start off? I had a conversation about this earlier to DEI. Like, do we even have to start off talking about what DEI is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
don't
mean, you
think.
could lay the foundation, I guess. I don't.
Well,
Pretty
diversity,
sure, but
equity, and inclusion.
inclusion, yeah.
Diversity means a mix of different types of people. Equity means it's not the same as equality, giving people the same opportunities, but based on the circumstances, giving opportunities that fit the different people's circumstances. And inclusion means to just be able to include all without exclusion of certain types of people. And so, what are the challenges when trying to have that kind of environment in the workplace? So Jamal, you started off by saying let's lay the ground. What do you think?
I think it's a really good question, and I think for me, it's it's been more systematic than anything else. So like as minorities, we have access to pretty much everything that we could want, right? And even as minorities, right, we have the most money we've ever had. So like we have access to get to certain things, but we still find ourselves not in the roles that we need to be in. And I think a lot of that goes to the fact that we're still trying to climb the rung of the institutions that promote and move in certain ways. So it, if if a hiring manager is from Duke, or if a hiring manager is from, and from another Ivy League school, Harvard or whatnot, they're going to look to get resources from the places and alums, or the people they've studied with, the people that they've done stuff with. And I think that's been the biggest barrier, is
Hmm.
that a lot of the things that have been established, that that are big, right? You talk about Microsoft, or you talk about by like pharma, you talk about schools. A lot of their top ranks come from high,
I
would come
believe.
from Ivy League, or if
Yeah.
it's not Ivy League, it's another school where they're hiring people that they know and people that they're friends with. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the problem is that if you don't force yourself to break that mold, it's never, you're always going to be kind of bringing in people that you're close to. So I think one of the biggest hurdles is just for us making sure that we are in the right space when it comes to education and when it comes to networking. Those are huge. We need to be in those spots, because the jobs are there. It's just we need to make sure that our names come up, like whether it's sponsorship or whether it's just because we were in the same program.
I think that's so critical. I went to a HBCU, and a lot of people a lot of my fellow alums, like, just work on just work on our schools and get, when affirmative action was destroyed by the Supreme Court, they were like, well, we just build up our own. I'm like, we have to have people in those seats
Yeah,
at the table in Ivy League, because many of the things that are getting promoted in this country are happening at those centers.
yeah,
Artificial intelligence, for instance, it's happening at those centers. So
mhm,
you got to have people at that table. And
exactly.
so I am a promoter of HBCUs. I went to one, and I want most of us to go. But if there are some African Americans that want to go to Ivy Leagues, we got to get them there. We got to get them to the table, because
And
that's where they're picking from.
that's
Yeah,
where we're picking from. And I think that piggy, like, just like, we're proponents of it too. Like, my son's HBCU, and we love it, and that's going to provide its own set of things. But you can't discount the fact that, like, when you go to, especially in the scientific, and I kind of learned this, working at Sanofi, right, is that a lot of, they put a heavy emphasis on the background, on the education, right?
background. Yeah.
And so when you start going into these large companies, that's when it starts to really kind of matter. And for us, when we could look at the TV, and when you think of computers, you think of Bill Gates, you think of Steve Jobs, you think of these people. When you think of money, you think of J.P. Morgan, you think of Schwab, right? When you think of industry, right? You got Rockefeller, you got other people, but none of those people are black, right? When you think about black, you think of LeBron, right? You think of Michael Jordan, you think of Oprah. And so for us, it's more of entertaining as opposed to like hard skills. And I think that's a tough one, right? Because we don't talk about the people that we have, right? Like we have people who led Xerox, we have people who've, led investment companies, what TIAA, right? We have these people, but they're not spotlighted. They're not in the, you have to be kind of in industry, or you have to be digging to find them. It's not something that's just out in the open. And I think that's a big deal too, because now, who are we aspiring, who are we aspiring to be? And so I think those pretty much, to me, those are the biggest things, right? You need to make sure that you have the ability to be sponsored so that you can get up in the right space. But we also need the right role models, right? We need people that can see that they could do this stuff too. Mm.
For sure, for sure. So, what about it in the context of healthcare and the government? What do you think of the? So we got Jamal in the context of industry about healthcare and the government.
I think Jamal said something that was really important. You mentioned that one of the biggest issues is the systematic problem, right? This is, and I guess this is a good plug for Maya's book. Um, yep, bring the book out now.
Yes.
Um, when it comes to being able to enter into a lot of these, a lot of these careers in STEM, and I can speak specifically to healthcare, it starts very early.
It does.
The when I was in residency and fellowship doing research, a lot of the students that came through my lab were high school students.
Yep.
There were a few college students, but they started from high school.
Yep.
But a lot of them didn't look like me.
Mhm.
And I know that it's because a lot of it was opportunity, right? Some of them they had to get a summer job, out of necessity. But if they actually had certain opportunities, like being able to get some of these research internships coming up from high school, college, things like that, that's something that goes on their application. That gives them another step up. And then you mentioned mentorship, having, the right people around and being able to see people that look like you in these fields, and having somebody to guide you in through the path. That's another, I would say, another avenue through which that our kids may not be able to enter into some of these fields. Um, and
Yeah.
then, specifically in healthcare, we know we're very small percentage. I think about 5% of doctors are black, right? So even just that, not seeing the representation,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
like all these things, I think work together to create a disadvantage.
And it's real. It's real. Howie, what about government? Like, what are the unique challenges that government faces in terms of?
I mean, I think it pretty much spans the gamut between government, industry, and so forth. It's for when it comes to STEM, you pretty much run into the same sorts of challenges. But government has always been a place. Government overall has always been a place. Actually, it has always been a pretty um, I don't know if the word is comfortable or not comfortable, but a place that, Black America has been able to find a stepping stone
Yep.
to, move forward, and I'm talking about generationally. Over time, the United States government has always been a place for a people to move forward. Um, so You mentioned something interesting earlier. You said that we have to get them there, right? So there's the like Kamoy mentioned, there's the groundwork that has to be done wherever you are, whether it be at the HBCUs, whether, you know, and there are partnerships that have been there for many years where, you know, different government agencies have partnerships and offices, labs, and so forth have partnerships with different schools where you have internships and so forth. But it's really huge when you can see some, you know, see someone who looks like you on the other side. So whether it be through mentorship or, you know, once people get into those spaces, then usually we are the ones who foster those type of opportunities. You know, we pour into, I've seen it myself where people pour into these type of opportunities. I've done it myself actually, um, with local colleges and universities where when people come in, you know, I make sure that I'm make myself present, you
Hmm.
know, and
Yeah.
say and provide, you know, opportunities to be for these people to for young people, young adults, young students who are looking in this arena to, you know, take opportunities and see and be influenced, you know, positively influenced to move in that direction. I've gone to conferences, whether it be public health conferences, you know, the science conferences that are around, same things. Because so when students show up at these conferences, they can see a familiar face. So that's sort of like the
Hmm.
work that we, you know, uh, that we have to engage in. Because the other side of it now, and that's probably the more controversial aspect of it, is what level of expectation should we have on the institution, on the industry, whether it be industry, government, whatever, to accept us, to foster, to do that
Right.
work on our behalf. Um,
Right.
you know, in the current climate and what we're
It's over.
seeing, you see, so that's a work that we that I feel like we definitely have to do on the ground.
What you're saying is so critical because, and what I love about this panel right here, this crew right here, is we have it from all STEM, from all sectors: education, academia with me, industry with Jamal, healthcare with Kamoy, government with Howard, and government and education were the main staples for African Americans. And if you notice, those are the main staples that are under attack when it comes to DEI. Why? Because you could kill that, then you kill wealth. Because we're not wealthy through industry, we're not wealthy through healthcare. Our wealth came from government and education. I mean, it's like, to me, it seems very targeted, but that's okay. We don't like, what we gonna do about it? What we gonna do about it? I did I'm listening to Warren Buffett. You know, he's one of my main heroes, a white man, one of my major heroes when it comes to finance. And he was talking about Japan today, or yesterday. I'm watching his. Yeah, he's
Hmm.
retiring from Berkshire Hathaway after 70 years of being a partner, and his stick a pin. Charlie, his partner, died last year, and he retires this year. I want to talk about the role of community. I think he was in it this long because of Charlie. And when Charlie died, he's like, what am I gonna do? My friend is gone, so let me just. He's 94 years old, but he gave such wisdom yesterday in his final shareholders meeting, and he was talking about Japan and how well they've turned everything around. And so I did a AI study on Hiroshima. Like, how did Japan come out of Hiroshima?
Hmm.
You know, if you want to know what the answer is, I'm gonna put it in the phenomenal
Okay.
financial freedom chat. But it was a lot that they did, but a lot of it has to do with education and industry and 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 relevant sectors. So, like, we're under attack. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? All right. So, next question. Next question. Um how has a lack of diversity in STEM impacted innovation, research, or workplace culture from your experience or perspective? Lack of diversity, equity. How has it affected innovation? I can say it from my experience in terms of education. Um, science is hard enough.
Hmm.
Science is hard to understand enough. And what makes it really difficult to understand is when your professor can't articulate the subject well. And from my perspective, as a college student, one of my toughest times, especially in the physical sciences, was learning from people who could not speak the language well to me, period, much less connect with me to a point where they can culture like illustrate cultural relevant ways of teaching me the subject. And so we need more black professors. We need more
Yeah.
in STEM. We need more English speaking professors. Like, we need professors that can articulate the information well for people to understand. And the lack of that has caused a great hindrance to, I think, that our sector. What about you guys?
That's an interesting point because some people may look at what you just said and say, well, that's not a very inclusive statement,
I know.
right? Because, if we look at the statistics, most people who are in STEM in this country tend to be, of immigrant status and so forth, right? Non-Americans do STEM, right? For the most part. And so, but the thing is that that's the beauty of DE&I. That's the beauty of diversity, the concept of diversity. Don't pigeonhole it into just foreign. The idea is that
It's
it's
for
it's
everyone.
the idea is that the problem that you just mentioned is that it's just one type all the time. This uniformity. It's one type of uniformity where you always have someone of a non-English, not always have, but the majority of the time you have professors of a non-English speaking, right? So it's not very diverse. You don't have English speaking people in that space, so it's not diverse enough for the student body that they have to serve,
Right.
right? So it's
Right.
the same concept that you find. My I think biggest peeve, so to speak, is really when it comes to is similar to that. Like in academia, it'll be the professors. Well, in industry and government, etc., many times it's management. So with management, you very a lot of time you want to diversify your staff and so forth, or you see the value in getting this person or getting these type of people, but your management is uniform. It all looks and sounds the same. And
Mm-hmm.
so you cannot connect to the staff that you'd like to have. And so you still end up sort of at a stalemate because you're not diversifying your management.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? How's it impacting your field? The lack. What negatively?
Yeah, what I would say is one thing that I don't I would jump away from Phil to an extent for this one, and I would say like how does it just impact the community and culture in general? Like so with all the stuff with DEI, where you hear about Harvard and some of the other schools, there hasn't been too much uproar about how big the dollar figure is that is going to these schools, right?
Mm,
You have billions here, you have all this money, but when you look at our schools, like when you look at the HBCUs, or when you look at schools that actually are pushing diversity or reaching a minority community, um, their endowments and their research dollars are shrank. And I think a lot of that is because I mean, well, not think, but there's no advocacy for it, right? Because in order to advocate for it, you have to be in the position. You see what I'm saying? And so when you have a situation where the people who can actually dole out the dollars for research, or the people who can speak in the ears of the people who are doling out the dollars for research, to say, hey, you know what, it should go to this school or it should go to that school, um, even if it's in a bid process or whatnot. You know what I mean? Like it's something to where if the dollars are right, they'll build whatever they need to, right? It's just where's that money going? And so like we have to be in a position to where we can
Yeah, the
speak to those
balance.
things. Yeah, and I think that's where the lack of diversity is really hurting us, is we can't speak to specific situations where money should be going or where decisions should be made, because we're not in a position, right? And there's a lot of times, like, my company does really good with diversity, like it's really good. Like, you go into my site and there's people from everywhere. You know what I mean? There's Russian, there's Haitian, it's just it's really diverse. Um, but at the same time, once you get to a certain level, that diversity starts
Yeah.
shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And so, not to take anything away, because it's still a beautiful thing, right? Because, the only way it can go up is if you have people to pull from. But, the folks who are really making decisions need to be like, that needs to be a diverse population as well. And so I think that's where we get hurt, is that we'll get in industry or we'll do stuff, but we have to make sure that we're of the folks that can make those decisions. And yeah, so I think the lack of diversity, that's the big, to me, that's a huge thing, is that how do we how do we move dollar figures from A to B? How do we advocate for a specific job position if no one's there to, what I mean, if you don't, if you're not there in that the position to do so? And
And
so that's the tough part.
to stick to continue in what you're saying, I'm putting myself in these positions whether I'm getting paid or not. So I'll use the
Yeah, yeah.
example of
Mhm.
I was trying to make a picture of us. I was trying to use artificial intelligence to make an
Mhm.
image of us, right?
Mhm.
And I use prompting in a well-known animative AI site. It's not ChatGPT or anything. It's an actual AI. It's an AI site that's known to make imagery. And they kept showing you and Howard, when I say, these men as scientists, microbiologists who work for the FDA
Mhm.
or whatever, they kept putting y'all as white men.
Yeah, yeah.
They kept putting y'all as white men. So I had to write the company. I wrote the company. I said, this is unacceptable. I gave the picture. You upload their image.
Mhm.
I uploaded your image and I said, I want you to take this black man's image and turn it into an animation as with him working as a microbiologist. And they turned his image white. I was livid, and they wrote back to me and said, "Oh, well, maybe you need to do the prompt better." I said, "This has nothing to do with the," and I escalated all the way up to the point where they apologized to me, said, "Yes, we're working on our," and I said in there, "You need to work on your diversity in your
Your
staff."
organization. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, but no, that's the thing. And so there was a documentary, a documentary. I can't remember if it was on Netflix or not, and I really wish I remember the name for it. But it was a lady and a young graduate, and man, it kind of escapes me because I saw this maybe like 3 4 years. It was a while ago. She's from MIT, I believe, and
Oh yeah.
she went through and she talked about how um, how not including specific groups or specific um, items within side of the learning for AI is it produces that kind of stuff. And so, but we're not, for our generation, it's not lost on us, right? Because we already know that, right? Our superheroes weren't black, right? Our superhero, like, and so, like, when we went to the movie theaters, like, our sitcoms look different. Like we understood that, that there's certain portrayals that would be out there. But when you think of AI, you go out and you type it in, and you're thinking, oh wow, it's going to search this vast amount of data and actually be blind to the stuff. And so no, you have to work to get it that way. And if you don't have the people there, it's not or the
Exactly.
if you don't have the
And
people.
I had to get them to acknowledge it, and they
Uh huh.
finally acknowledged it, and I said thank you. And so that's how I put myself in these spaces. Even if
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not hired, I gotta make it known, because even our opening cartoon, Kamoy is a hot yellow woman. I couldn't. Kamoy, talk to me. What's the talk to me? Talk to me about the impact of not having diversity in your situation, in your workplace
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah, it's huge.
I mean, it's it was a big topic in a few probably a few years ago when the data got published
Yeah.
that showed that black patients do better with a black doctor. So
Hmm.
this is scientifically proven.
Hmm.
But the issue, of course, as we know, like I said, we are what 13, 14% of the population,
Hmm.
but we make up about 5% of physicians.
Yeah.
Um, so that in and of itself just goes to show why we need more representation, and how our industry is definitely impacted.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, even the medical doctors or students, residents, talking about black patients have a different tolerance levels of pain because our skin is different. Like that's what's going on in the mindset of people who serve black patients. So when they're crying out in pain, they don't believe that they're really in pain.
correct. Or they call them dramatic, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's a like. So we talk a lot about disparities in education, in healthcare, and we come from we a lot of the times we come from a perspective of this it's our fault. Like, oh, if we just eat better, or if we would just study more, if we would, you understand. But there
Mhm.
are structural systems in place. Think about the healthcare, the environmental racism, where you got toxic waste being pushed back into people's homes because that an executive order was removed that Biden acknowledged that there was environments causing damage. You remove that, so you have toxic environments. You have food deserts. So you can't go in an easy way to get proper food. But it's only if we would just eat better, we would be more healthy.
It's systemic. The problem is systemic, and it's from birth all the way up until. So yeah, the until we see changes in every single step up, it's gonna be a fight, and we're not gonna see the representation that we need to see.
Amen. Amen. So DEI is important, y'all. Diversity, equity, inclusion is it really, really is, and there are issues. So let me ask you a question: what role of does mentorship and sponsorship play in helping underrepresented students advance in the STEM field? So we kind of talked about this a ways back in trying to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is the role of mentorship and sponsorship?
I would say for me, it goes back to some of the stuff that we've kind of hit on, and I think that mentorship and sponsorship is great. But I think the one type of sponsorship that's pivotal, and which I think is more, I don't want to say more critical than mentorship, because you need both, right? You need someone who can guide you, but you need someone who can speak up for you as well. And that'll actually move the needle. And it goes back to what I was mentioning before. If we're in those rooms, then when opportunities come available, we can speak up and we can move the needle. So when internships become available, we can say, hey, you know what, let's put that into our circle. And so that's how we ourselves can actually participate in moving forward DEI, right? Because now putting it in our population to where, hey, you know what, someone else can see this. And it talks about this a little bit, what Kamoy was mentioning too, right? You were saying a lot of high schools were coming in there. They had to know about that from somewhere. So someone said, "Hey, you know what? We have this thing. This person, this person, this person. This is how you can apply, or this is how we're going to advertise this, right? That's probably not advertised in our population, right? You know what I mean? Just because not because any malicious intent. It's just the circles that it moved around was just not and not in our circle. So I think that's a huge part in terms of not direct sponsorship. Sometimes it can be because it can be targeted, like, hey, this is here, I'm making sure that I let this person know. But I think that's a huge deal, being able to being able to disseminate the information so that people in other cultures can actually see it and know that it's available. Because that's a huge part of the puzzle in general.
I think also a part of the puzzle is believing it too, though, because
Hmm.
I've reached out to people. I just went to, in Pine Hills, there's a slew of daycare centers.
Hmm. Yeah, there is.
And, I created a phenomenal STEM daycare program. And I knocked on every one of those doors. Like, I went to Pine Hills and I went old school canvassing.
Yeah, they don't want to do the work.
Old school canvassing, like how I sold books door to door. I,
Yeah,
I went, I put on my literature evangelist crew and talked to every one of them. And I might have gotten two callbacks, and and the two that I got, I haven't gotten a short closing yet. Now
but you know what I?
you might say it might be my sales
Yeah,
skills. It might be my sales skills. Maybe I can't close the deal. I can go with that, but I'm a pretty good salesperson based on my history of selling books. I also feel like people don't value it either. I don't know. Do they really
yeah.
value it?
But I will say that I will say from what I've experienced, and like I just said, I work on the programming side, and so just like mentioned before, programming is something you get some books, or if you have the desire to learn, you can just pick it up if you want to do it. And everybody is enamored with programming. Like, hey, you know what? I want to do this. It'd be cool. Let me learn how to create websites, or let me learn how to create an app. And it's always fun until someone actually has to put pen to paper. You know what I'm saying, or things like that. And so that's to me that spans across all cultures, white, black, whatever. Like some people just look and they're just like, hey, you know what, I'm not doing that. And I think that's fine. I think the but you we want to make it like, I think the for folks who actually have the desire to move forward, the door just has to be open. And so I think that's the bigger thing, because I've worked with a lot of people who say, hey, you know what, I wanna learn computers, and they'll be in there for like 2-3 days and be like, nah, you
Nah.
know what I mean? And it's just like, sometimes you make it fun, like you attach into Minecraft, or sometimes you just say, hey, you're older, let's do this. But the thing is just the mindset. It's just like some people, they look at the math and they're like, hey, you know what, I can do this. Some people look at the math just like, no, 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 we're not doing this. And so I think that spans all the cultures. But I think when you talk about people who want to advance and they actually gravitate to it and it's natural to them, do they have the opportunity to move that forward? You see what I'm saying? Do they
Yes.
have the opportunity
Yeah.
to do that? And sometimes that's not the case.
Got it.
And that's pivotal. And so Henley out there doing the thing with the robotics, right? He's providing opportunity. So he's saying, look, this is out here. You know, I'm going to pull you, but if you understand it, you can come through and you can do it. And the opportunity is there for people to grow, be great. You know what I mean? But they
So
have to,
I gotta work on finding the people that want to do it versus
that
just trying
want
to do
to
a
that
cold
want to do
call,
it.
wasting my time with people who don't care. But focus. Find how do I do that? How do I even find people that want to do this?
That's that's the thing. And
That's
so you're asking that question, but think about that, right? If you think about it that hard, when you knock on the door and say this is it, if they already, like, you know what I'm saying, there's already a disconnect in that situation, because they're just like, all right, this is cool, but now I'm gonna have to push this on people who already don't want to learn. You know what I mean? So it's like the door has to be already open and wide, and it's not enticing enough sometimes to say, hey, this is guaranteed money. Like, if you just follow this path, you read these books, you do these things, you're going to come out making X amount of dollars. Like, the math
and I,
just math, right?
Howard. You wanted to say something? You right?
and
Yeah,
I
you right.
think
Come on.
and I think that's this work is hard work. This effort is hard
It
work.
is. It
It
is.
just is. Hey, I mean, STEM is hard. Um, and reaching out and being present and shifting mindsets for a
Hard.
people
Hard.
um is hard.
Hard.
Um,
Harder.
One of the benefits, as you probably noticed in your study there, Maya, because now you're bringing me way back with that Hiroshima situation. One of the benefits that you have in any sort of situation like that, where a nation, undergoes, a big, is that they were already they're already unified.
Mm,
They're already unified. That's one of the they're already the idea was for them to become unified, was for it to be, it's sort of like the 9/11 effect, right? Oh, we
Yeah.
all got hit. And
Yeah.
so it was easier for everyone to come together and say, okay, and galvanize and have empathy for one another and say, we're going to move forward together. And so with our situation is fractured because of Western culture. The impact of Western culture is that you have this individualism effect. So what you're saying, Jamal, is really important because the math doesn't math. It doesn't math. But and so you have to, there's an element that you have to inject in this work. And it's literally the keep hope alive element. Like there's a hope element because the math doesn't math. Because when somebody's trying to, when these young people and so forth, and they're moving forward and they're trying to find their niche, etc., and they're saying, well, this is something I could do or want to do versus,
mm,
not. And they say, well, I want to do, so let's say I want to do something that's lucrative. The math doesn't math because they don't see, right? They don't see themselves there.
mm,
Yeah.
So
That's what 10 years is about.
if you don't see yourself there, then the math doesn't math. It's like,
Mm.
well, that's a poor, that's gonna math like a poor investment
mm,
because that's not where we are. That's not gonna work. What's the likelihood, etc. All the, if you do a risk assessment and just try to do straight facts, yeah, you can achieve it, but because of all these elements, what's the likelihood, right?
Yeah.
So there's actually there is a hope element that has to be
yeah.
injected into that. And we, when I say we, those of us who end up occupying those spaces in order to say, hey, come on, the water's fine, you know and we lying, the water is not fine. Like we have to be honest with them and
Yeah.
say, no, this is tough, this is hard for a number of, for various reasons. It's tough for everyone, it's going to be tough for everyone, but hey, the reality is it's been tougher for us. That's why you haven't seen us here, so this is one of the struggles. That's part of the struggle.
Mm,
Part of the struggle is injecting that hope aspect to it.
Looks
yeah.
like you wanted to say something, Kamoy.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we're also up against a beast called social media.
Mm,
Who?
I think that is a pretty big obstacle right there, and what the perception is of certain careers over careers in STEM.
mm,
I
Mm-hmm.
saw a recent survey that showed that um, almost 70% of kids, when they asked, and these are high school students,
Mm-hmm.
asked what they wanted to do, it was, I think number one was YouTube influencer.
Influencer.
Yeah,
Yep.
I never, and I didn't, I didn't see that one coming when I was,
I can't believe it.
yeah, I think it was YouTube influencer, and another one I think was content creator, but all of them were altogether it was almost 70% of people that wanted to do that. And I think like anything in STEM was like maybe 10 or 15%, something like that.
So,
So yeah, we're up against a,
The
and
math is
I think
mathing.
that when we were growing up, and then, we're kind of old, but when we were growing up, right, the majority of people were like, I wanted to be
a
a lawyer,
pediatrician.
doctor, engineer, right? Those are
yeah.
always the things that people said they wanted to do. So this is it's a it's a much different environment that we're in. So I think that has a lot to do with why, you may see that there's just a lack of interest, in addition to lack of opportunity. I think both, just both things together is what's making it so hard.
Well, maybe I just need to be honest with the folk out here. Listen, like I'm gonna start paying y'all quarterly, y'all $2. You know what I'm saying? Because I got $20. Like I got $20 last month from Facebook. Like that with I don't get millions of hits. I get maybe thousands of hits, and they gave me $20. Okay, in the month. I'm talking about that was my paycheck. I said I told y'all as soon as I started getting cash that's worthy of something, I might give you some percentage. That's that $2, $2, $2, right?
It's
I'll keep
it's
this
the
money.
new it's the
It's
new
not a
hoop
lot of
dream.
Yeah, it
It's the
is.
new hoop dream.
It's
It is.
hoop dreams, man, and it's the next hoop dream, and the core. I say this all the time. What has gotten us out of poverty as a people has always been is the most well documented. It's an education in relevant industries. There's a question out here. Bryant says, "In my day, internships were frowned upon because of the need of money to support summer living. What can be done to encourage individuals who are from low income areas to consider non-paid internships? Or are there side jobs that can be done while, I guess, home honestly giving time for internships? Honestly giving time for internships. That's a good question. I just one of my family members was looking for an internship, and I'm building one for him with phenomenal STEM. It's time for us as a community to build businesses and create internships for our people, and it's not paid.
Yeah.
Um, it all you got to do is be honest. Say, listen, it's you don't have nothing, so you can get something with me and get a job. So you can get a job, and the beauty of many internships now it's virtual.
Yeah.
So
One.
so I think students are in my opinion he appreciated it. I think students are just looking for the opportunity. I have students that are at other institutions that has left me and they're at universities and they can't get internships at their university. They call back to me, Dr. Blackpool, you have anything for me to do? Yeah, I got a research project. Come,
Mhm.
I'm not paying them. They're just looking for opportunities so they can put on their CV. So I don't think it's that hard to find students that are willing to do non-paid internships. Not in the context of STEM. Maybe
So
other
yeah, right.
maybe other fields, but STEM we've always known it's not paid. Yeah. However
That's
you
what I
want.
was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. STEM is always because for most folk, uh, with STEM, the maths.
Yeah. Yeah.
In general, for STEM, everybody know. For most people, once you reach, as a matter of fact, I just heard about a program. My next door neighbor was telling me about a program that her high school graduating senior son got into a biology program out here in the Midwest, and he's going to be a part of a program that offers that where they begin as a freshman in an internship program. And I was like,
Hmm.
what? I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't know nothing. There was nothing like that. I remember
That's
when
what we
we
doing now. That's what
so
I'm doing now.
that's what
Yeah.
they're doing now.
That's
So
what,
so
yeah.
usually, by the time you get into internship mode, that's going to be sophomore, junior year, and so forth.
Mhm.
Usually that was the earliest. By that time, you knew what the math was sort of mathing to be, so you knew that this was an opportunity, even if the knowledge was like getting paid. The experience was like you getting paid. You understood that because once you
Yeah.
get that on your resume,
Yeah.
that puts you leaps and bounds in terms of experience, because normally you're coming out of school without the experience and just the education, and that's it's much more, it's much more meaningful when you can come out with some hands-on experience.
Yeah. To answer your question here, Brian, I was kind of alluding to it to your first question. Welcome back, Brian. Let me know
Yes.
if you want to come in the show. I'll send you the link. Um, yeah, more than ever. Artificial intelligence prompting, that's digital. A lot of internships can be done digitally. You don't got to be in lab. Matter of fact, in my opinion, that's more relevant versus being in a wet lab and trying to do experiments. That's hard to get an opportunity in a wet lab to do experiments with pipetters. It's easier
Mhm.
to get technology internships. So that's what I would say for those who are in STEM. Get a technology internship where it involves you doing everything digitally. All right, next question. Next question. Unless y'all had any answers to, I think. All right. In what ways can STEM organizations move beyond diversity quotas to create real inclusion and real belonging?
I don't know.
I
To
don't think.
me,
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
me, yeah, I'm a super optimistic person. That's just by nature who I am. But um, I don't know. I don't think companies are kind of built for built for that, right? If a company is if it's ingrained in their culture to be diverse, they're going to be diverse. If it's ingrained in their culture not to be diverse, like it's tough to break. You know what I mean? Like a company is just like anything else, like a family or it's kind of like a person. You know what I mean? And so once it builds its identity, like it's tough to make and mold and move that. And so, it's just a tricky thing. And for me, I tell my wife all the time, like I only thrive in certain work environments. So the place I'm at now fits me really well because of, how I can balance, the culture, the people, the work, and all that stuff. Because, you know, sometimes the culture just doesn't fit. And so I don't know. It's just tough. It's tough to if it's tough to say, what, you have to be diverse because if it's not ingrained in a culture, they're gonna just like right now, right? They're rolling everything back because it's not within, like it's not in the nature. Like why, what I'm saying? It's not in the nature of the companies to do so. So they'll do some things here and there, which is great, to still show diversity and to to show equity and inclusion. But it's just really, really difficult if it's not built inside of the company already. Like I've seen a bunch of companies where it's just you look at that company and you're like, look, they're never gonna you can't change them. You can't change them. And then you look at some where, okay, you know what, they may see the light, but if it's not built into it, you're not going to change it. And to me, it's just baffling because it's just there's so much data that shows if you have a diverse organization, like you just get a better product. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it baffles me, but to an extent, I understand it as well because this goes for black companies, white companies, right? If I know you, I know your work skill, and I'm hiring for something, like I'm hiring you, right? If I have a position and I see Howie's coming down to Florida, I'm be like, hey Howie, what's up? Let's get over here. So that's what I'm saying. I can't really knock it. I'm just saying that it's really difficult to change that because you have to put money into it, you have to put time into it, you have to like invest in it. And so I don't know, like for if you really want something to where it fits your community, you have to build it, or you just like you were saying, like you got to put the opportunity out there, to your community. But you can't rely on the organization to do it because it's not what it's built for.
Yeah, we gotta start bankrupting companies that don't value diversity. Target. I mean,
Yeah,
make
but
people.
here's my thing for that, and that's true, right? And I understand that, and my wife, she's definitely more on it than me about this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, when you really think about it, right? How much is Target stance really going to change? Do you see what I'm saying? If you look at where Targets are located, they're not going to like we're going to affect their
Bottom
money,
line.
right? But it's first off, it's going to blow over. But secondly, just that it's a cultural thing, right? And so we're asking them to do something that is probably not in their DNA. And for me, I'm a little different because like Target's rolled back some stuff, but I think in terms of DEI, placement on the shelf and all that stuff, like I still give them a lot of props for even pushing and going beyond the bounds of what they, because they initially did a lot. in terms of store shelf space and all that. But, just like I said, if it's not in you, you look at the dollar figures, you're like, man, look, I'm spending, I gotta, like they're paying the person running DEI, I'm saying, a lot of cash. Then you got people underneath that. So you're talking about this huge line item. And it's just like, what am I getting for this line item? Just people that come to the table and tell me stuff that I can't do? Like, nah, 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 nah. We're cutting that. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so
but the way Jamal Bryant represented it, it was like most of their workforce is African American. Like there is
and we
a
still gonna work there. That's what I'm trying to
well,
that's what I'm
maybe
trying
we
to say.
should, but maybe we shouldn't, because if most of our if they're not serving us, and they're using us, then shouldn't there, like,
We shouldn't. And I guess that's what I'm saying though, is yes, we should pull back, right? And even if we do pull back, what I'm saying is they're still going to fill that void, right? Because they're not even in our community. And
right,
so even I don't think that it's a I think it's more of a, an issue with the direction and the culture of the company, right? Like you can't, that's like me going into someone, like if, like just like marriage, right? When you marry somebody, you can't change their character. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like you can't change who they are. You just have to adapt to who they are.
right,
And I think that's really how cultures are. Some cultures are agile and they can change like that, but some aren't. So if it's not built on the foundation
right,
of we're going to treat people right,
right. We
it's
can't
just
force it.
difficult. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
difficult to navigate. You could threaten, you can do whatever you want, but they're just gonna withdraw. It's just literally think about people that we interact with on a daily.
yeah,
Like you see them, you're like, this is crazy. You should change and do this. You can give them all the information that you can,
can't chase people.
but you can't change them. So our thing is, for me, I see all the, like, we have entertainers, we have sports people. You know, you hear about some of the investments they do sometimes, and I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, we should be buying big tech. Why don't we? Why don't we have banks? And it's easy for me to say because I'm not. It's not my money and all that stuff, and I don't have $1 billion, right? But if I did, like, look at Arnold Palmer, right? My man got a hospital labeled after him. Winnie, like they're doing things that are changing the world, right? And so where is our where are millionaires
Liquor,
investing
But
to
but
liquor,
like but
alcohol.
like you
No,
said,
seriously, I looked.
no, it's serious,
I
it's
did a
serious, it's serious
conversation.
talk,
I had a conversation,
it's serious talk.
talk on Phenomenal Financial Freedom about the top African American billionaires, and many of them became billionaires because of their investment in alcohol,
Yeah, no, it's true.
sports, and
And so, but that's the rub that it is right now. So
I
just
lost you.
said, where no, there's it's like where are our banks? And I'm not talking about just like a little community bank here in the cut. Like, we have the resources, right?
Yeah, we do.
To cut into industry. It's just, first you need the expertise, right? But you also need the money. And so for us, we need to be pioneers in that, right? Like, there's certain things that's just like, okay, some things are just big, right? Sometimes, we don't need a huge AI company, but there's
Right,
biopharma starting all the time. You see what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah,
There's like, what does it take to start a bank? Like, you look it up, and really you just have to have the money, right?
right,
you know, and what are we really buying? And just like you said, we're putting our money into stuff that's kind of, I want to say, to an extent, kind of frivolous, or they're doing the right thing. They're trying to protect their family, their legacy, and so they're investing in their stuff, which is fine. But I think that's where the tough part is. We're not
Howard.
buying businesses and creating them.
Yeah, Howard, you were saying
So then
something,
we need the quotas.
huh? Come on,
Then
come on.
until then, we need the quotas.
Until then, we need the quotas.
Yes, until then,
Yeah,
until we
yeah,
have developed things like that where we're able to provide more opportunities for our people, those quotas
yeah.
are needed.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of that. Like I think that like affirmative action is a critical thing, right? You know,
Critical.
even for just getting federal contracts, right?
Yeah.
I haven't done it in a while since they've been starting to fool with all the DEI stuff, but the ability for minorities to go in and win those contracts and do those things, that's a big deal. You
Yeah.
know, that's a big deal. But at the same time, I see the other side of it too, so it's kind of this whole like balance act, but the but you have, if you don't force the people's hand,
They're
you
not
know
going to do it if they don't force people's hand. But right now, we're not in a climate to force the people's hand. So we're going to have to build our own. They got rid of affirmative action, guys. It's out of the Supreme
You
Court.
can't. I'm aware of a black owned company, electrician company, who definitely benefited. A gentleman I know and his family definitely benefited over the years over government contracts.
yeah.
Hmm.
And his own electrical company. And he's doing very well. And this is something that been, a rug that's been pulled out from him. Um,
Hmm.
so that's, so these are the type of things that it has to now become more internalized. It has to
Right.
become, it's got to be brought home. You got to invest in home. You got to bring the resources together and build and build. And unfortunately, it's a tough balance act, like you say, because that's literally what I feel those powers that be that are cutting everything, that's what they're sort of pushing or forcing the hand for us to actually do,
Yeah.
where it's
Hmm.
like you got to build, and it's sort of like we're in a position now where a lot of folk, like you mentioned, who are not specifically people, but like people who have the resources. These are people who, in our communities, we feel, a lot people would refer to them as heroes,
Hmm.
right? And because it looks like they're going towards a cause that benefits us, it looks like they're doing this, they're buying this, and so forth. And this is the type of stuff that's going to cause people in those positions to really put your money where your mouth is.
Hmm.
Are you really about causes? Are you really about, what it is that you're saying you're doing on our behalf? Because now you see a set of people struggling as a result of, um, funding and so forth that's been retracted, that's been pulled out.
Yeah.
Are you willing to now put in where there's a deficit,
And
on
the
behalf
answer
of your people?
and the answer is no. All these grants, these NIH grants that were for health disparities and equity, and NSF grants that they all got denied. And I bet you that many people aren't going to continue with those projects. I'm telling you guys, we have experienced our own Hiroshima. African
you know
Americans, we are in Hiroshima, y'all. And so it's time to unify and build our own. No one is coming to help us.
no, no.
No
what i
one.
would what I'll say too
No one.
is I'm I understand that we need to actually be in the spaces of higher education, like in terms of the PWIs and the Ivy Leagues, right? That there's a spot for that. But in the search for trying to find the school for my son to go to, we visited a bunch of HBCUs. And if the story be told, we undervalue and underappreciate what we have because we think, okay, you know what, we have these dilapidated schools that aren't putting out, top quality stuff. And that's one thing that I saw that it was a really shift for me because I always knew we had like good schools, but like it still is it brings a sense of excellence once you step on the campus and you see, okay, you know what, like like these
Great.
are these are great institutions, right? And they're putting out research, they're putting out all these things, and so um, why aren't our kids going there? Like these are, and they're good state schools, right? You know, we were just in Nashville. We saw TSU. You know, and there we got FAM. You have all these schools that actually will support and push you forward, and so we need to we you know we need to be getting our kids in these schools because you know if we can do that, then you know just like you said, education a lot of times is key. So you know we need to make sure that people know that are our schools are great. And I
Great.
think one thing that did come out of George Floyd and like all that mess is um, we were able to get a lot more money pushed into those schools, and you can see the dorms, you can see a lot of the buildings that actually got built just because a lot of the money was pushed into it within the last
5 years.
5, 6, yeah, you know, and so so we have excellence, and we need to make sure that that we that we that we let the people know and we display it because we could build stuff. You know, we don't have to rely.
We
We can
can
go in
turn
and
our dollars in the right direction. Get our
yeah,
dollars
yeah.
out of liquor. Get our dollars
Hmm.
out of entertainment, sports, and let's empower ourselves with things that are relevant and that we know that's what Japan did. That's I'm gonna put it in phenomenal financial freedom. The list of what Japan did, and they had help from the government. So I'm not gonna discount that, right? But but listen, last question. If we could redesign STEM pipeline, what changes would you promote? Would you make to promote DEI? Like if we could from the start, from education up, what where would you make the most change?
It's math low level.
Low level.
Yeah, we want to get them introduced to
Foundation.
math super early. You know,
Hmm.
get them comfortable.
We're all in agreement. Getting them into math early, getting them liking math early is critical. The education piece is the foundation. No more social media influence. It's just another hoop dream. It's an extension of our obsession with entertaining everybody else. We are obsessed with being a clown. Black people, we got to stop with the entertainment of everybody else, whether it be through sports, music, now social media.
But
Educate.
Doc, but Doc, it pays. The math is mathing.
It
That's
does
why they're.
not.
That's why they're.
It's
That's
not.
why they're.
I
That's
told
why
you I got
they're.
$20. I told you I got $20. It does not pay. It's
They're lying to
they're
you.
lying to you,
Yeah, or
right?
they're not saying the amount of work that goes into it and the
80,
amount of money. So these people are
Well,
spending
well,
days and
how
hours
many people,
they're
right?
working.
That's the hoop dream aspect of it. How
Hmm.
many people actually make it? That's the whole
Yeah,
thing
and
that's the
about it.
thing. That's the
on
thing.
top of the ones that make it, how many of them don't go bankrupt? 80 to 90% go bankrupt within 5 years of retirement. And
Hmm.
I'm talking about at 23 years old. Because you're not a sports person at 50. You get in there around 19 and you conk out by 25. And then you don't have the mindset on how to build yourself.
Hmm.
Okay? So they're so like they're lying to you, and it's my responsibility not to focus on them lying, but me making STEM. I can't STEM. That's what 10-year me is all about, right? Seeing yourself. A lot of you talk about we can't. They can't see themselves. 10-year me is being able to see yourself in the next 10 years as an engineer, as a software engineer, as an mechanical engineer, building robots, right? And sustaining it for years. We gotta make it a dream.
Active.
we
Yeah.
gotta we gotta make STEM dreams. How about that? Instead of hoop dreams, STEM dreams. Last question. Bryant says, do you lose respect for a company who will not publicize their DI work but practice it, given the rationale that the business sides says the credits, discounts, grants are too valuable to give up? No, I don't lose respect. That's what education is doing right now. Like that's what I gotta do right now. I gotta be in this we out movement. We out the Harriet Tubman movement, where we underground railroad. We gotta go underground railroad. And so no, I don't. No, I don't lose respect for that. I don't know about you guys. What y'all think? Y'all lose respect for people who don't publicize their DA work but get all the grants for it,
As long as it gets done,
as long
you
as it
know,
gets done.
As long as it gets done,
As long
absolutely.
as it gets done.
as long as
Yeah,
it gets done, because you're people are being penalized for it.
yeah,
There's you're openly being penalized for it these days. So, and a lot of times people are being penalized for it because of a misunderstanding of what it actually is the actual purpose of it.
right,
So these are the people who are putting it out there a lot of time, or I should say a lot of times companies are putting that stuff out there in order to look relevant, right? And just to meet the quotas and make it look like that you're doing this awesome effort.
right,
But it's not actually, to Jamal's point, it's not actually a part of your culture.
right,
It isn't actually a part of your identity as an organization. It's just an add-on that it became evident. It actually happened.
it
It
happened.
wasn't a part of these companies' organizational culture. It
Yeah,
became an add-on for the purpose of maybe we could, let's see what happens. Let's see if maybe it'll move the needle on our overall revenue without it actually being a part of our culture. And that's a recipe for disaster. That's not organizational development is going to show you, those studies are going to show you that that's not going to give you an actual outcome.
Yeah.
It's
One
not
thing
going to
I'll
give you the
say about
true outcome of that sort of effort.
yeah, one thing I want to say about this too is, you know, the companies the company's culture is one thing, right? But I put some onus on us. And I think that becomes that comes in the form of these companies really, to an extent, only care about bottom line. Like no one is sitting in their boardroom at Target and saying, you know what, we don't want to do this, right? They're looking at the bottom line.
yeah,
And this goes for a lot of companies. And this is one of the things that's kind of pushing back at Trump. And that's why I'm not too, things are nerve wracking. But at some point, the money starts talking, and the people are just like, yo, you got it. Nah, we're not doing that. And, me and my wife, we saw Sinners yesterday. And if you look at the numbers, we supported it. When Black Panther came out, we went out and we supported it. There's a ton of stuff we put money into.
yeah,
And so if we want our products at Target, Target gave us the ability to show out, right? They gave us the ability to go out and say, you know what, these are our products. We're gonna go out and we're just gonna keep them off the shelf. And so that puts a bind for our people because now they have to figure out manufacturing and keeping it on the shelf and all that. But that's a problem that you want to have, right?
right,
And so I think that's one of our things. Like, why is, you know, like I use Bell soup. Like, I try to use black on soap. Like I try to find black on toothpaste. I try to do all this stuff. We use black on hair products. Like, those are things that we search for when we're in there. If I can get black on Clorox, I'm in there for it. You see what I'm saying? But it's one of those where we as a community have to go in there and just be like, look, we taking this. And I think that's a tough pill to swallow when, just said, when we could find enough money to go get the J's, but we can't find enough money to spend an extra $2 on soap because we're gonna get swapped for $1 instead of spending, what I'm saying, $5. So
hmm,
I think that's one of the things too. It's not all on us because the company still got a part to play, but we have a responsibility to make sure that when our people are put into a spot where we could support them because they making good products, that we go and we go get it.
purchase, you purchase.
And so I just said I always go back to that because there's no way a black owned product should stay on the shelf. You see what I'm saying?
Speaking of black
And
owned
yeah,
products,
there you go.
Speaking of black owned products, there's no reason why they should stay on the shelf.
Agreed.
I had to
I
take that
love it.
slam.
I
I
love
had to
it.
take that slam dunk. I had to take
I
that
love
slam.
it.
Listen, y'all, this was an awesome conversation. I think Howard jumped off so he could watch the Nuggets lose. Oh no, they won already. I forgot. My bad. It's Houston versus Golden State tonight. I'm going for Houston. I can't stand Golden State, so I'm gonna go for Houston. I don't care. Yeah. Guys, it's been an awesome conversation. I'll close with this statement from Bryant. Love that you were here, Bryant. Our issue has never been ability or money. It's buy-in. We fail to be patient, I'm assuming, for long-term success. Those that have the ability do not have the desire to see it through past the initial push. So it's buy-in, never ability. Guys, it's time to increase our buy-in. It's time to. I am the phenomenal STEMist. Thanks so much for joining. I'll see y'all next month. It's my birthday
All
next
right.
week. Buy my book. Bye,
All
everybody.
right.
Wave to the
Bye.
camera.